Have you ever felt like you were prophesied a great future in childhood, almost called a genius, but today you feel like a complete failure? Looking back, you see medals, diplomas, the admiring gazes of teachers, and parents beaming with pride. But what do you see now, standing on the threshold of adulthood? Disappointment, stagnation, the oppressive realization that you've let down not only others' expectations, but your own. If these feelings resonate with you, then this video is for you. And believe me, you are not alone. The bitter truth is this: the world is not made for brilliant minds. It is made for those who can function, and that, you see, is not at all the same as being gifted. In childhood, your sharp mind, incredible perceptiveness, and overflowing creativity seemed like invaluable gifts. But now they feel like an unbearable burden, as if all that colossal potential has become a heavy weight you silently carry day after day, wondering at what point you lost your way. You can't shake the feeling that you could have achieved more, become better, created something significant. And perhaps that's true. But what if the problem isn't with you? What if the root of the issue lies in inflated expectations, unfulfilled promises, in the self-belief that was imposed on you? The greater the mind, the deeper the sorrow, wise Arthur Schopenhauer once declared. And perhaps now, as you hear these words, you are beginning to grasp the full depth of his prophecy. For to possess a sharp mind is to see what is hidden from most, to feel with your entire being the mediocrity and banality of the surrounding world. It's this oppressive feeling that you analyze too deeply, feel too acutely, understand too much, yet act unforgivably little. Your mind, like a sharp sword, paralyzes you, making you question absolutely everything. You doubt every step, every decision, your very essence. And while others, unburdened by such torment, simply drift through life, you remain frozen, tormented by the question, where did the spark that once ignited you go? Why do you feel so lost and empty now? This video is not a tedious lecture or empty motivation, but an honest and frank conversation with that part of your soul that is tired of pretending everything is fine. We will look into the eyes of the pain that torments a person who, since childhood, was told they were special, chosen, but now feels they have failed to live up to those expectations. They feel betrayed by these expectations, crushed by their weight. We will take Schopenhauer as our philosophical guide to understand the causes of this state and find ways out of this internal chaos. After all, it's not about bringing back the brilliant child you once were. No, it's about finding your true self, wise and strong, capable of living in harmony with your mind and heart. So it's time to face the truth and realize the person you've become. If you're reading these lines, then this pain is your personal burden. Stay here. You deserve to hear words you never had the chance to hear before. Your talent hasn't vanished without a trace. It was merely buried under the weight of others' expectations that were never truly yours. From childhood, you were instilled with the idea that being smart wasn't just a quality. It was your essence, your identity. You were special, outstanding, destined for a great future. Remember, it wasn't just about excellent grades and quick learning. It was about how adults looked at you, with admiration, as if they saw something rare, almost magical. Your every word brought them pride. Every achievement seemed a harbinger of a bright future. They looked at you, wide-eyed, with a smile full of hope. But no one warned you, perhaps because they didn't understand themselves, that along with those compliments, you received an invisible cage, a label that glittered like a jewel on the outside but corroded your soul from within. To be called a genius at 8 years old seems like a gift of fate, but by 30, it can turn into a curse, dragging you down. The curse of early recognition is that it seems to shackle your worth to your achievements. You stop being just a child, you become a prodigy. And this title, like an invisible chain, binds you to an unspoken agreement. You must constantly impress. For if you stop, stumble, or fail, everyone will realize there was no prodigy after all. This thought haunts you like a shadow. You absorb like a sponge, that your worth lies in your exceptional results, that you will earn love, respect, and admiration only if you shine forever. And this burden makes you grow up in constant, exhausting fear, the fear of disappointing. And this fear, despite all assurances, doesn't propel you forward but paralyzes you. It makes you procrastinate, sabotage opportunities, and delay starting projects. Because when only genius is expected of you, any movement seems insufficient, not up to par. You were taught to be exceptional, but no one taught you to be simply human. And the cruelest part of it all is that this label doesn't fade with time. It becomes ingrained in your adult life. And now you're no longer a prodigy, but rather a disappointment, and the shame of not meeting expectations burns from within. You are like a shadow, slipping away from noisy family gatherings, avoiding chance encounters with former teachers. You are haunted by an unspoken comparison to those who once seemed less gifted, but are now basking in the glow of stability and success. Arthur Schopenhauer, that prophet of pessimism, yet also of piercing truth, saw this pain as inevitable. The world, in his view, is deaf to individual genius. A blind, relentless will to life pushes us forward in fruitless searches for satisfaction, and the sharper our consciousness, the clearer we see the meaninglessness of this race. What for most is merely a faint shadow of disappointment is for you a deep, almost existential melancholy. You didn't just want to live well. You yearned for your life to be filled with meaning, to leave a mark, to be marked by greatness. But harsh reality does not bend to these high aspirations. And with each new awareness of this truth, it seems that something inside you quietly fades. And so the inevitable oppressive question arises. If talent is not a guarantee, if all these efforts are so fragile, what then drives us? What makes a person keep searching when the horizon is shrouded in meaninglessness? Perhaps the answer lies in what Schopenhauer called the will. That blind impulse that drives us takes on peculiar forms in geniuses, and this is what we are now exploring. Perhaps what you consider a failure is not your personal shortcoming at all, but the echo of a silent battle against an external will imposed on you. Schopenhauer asserted that people are governed by an irrational, unconscious force, the will to life. But contrary to popular belief, this will does not submit to reason, logic, or the pursuit of happiness. It is blind, relentless, and at times cruel. Its sole desire is to exist, to continue, to assert itself, to crave more. In the ordinary person, this will manifests in simple, understandable desires for comfort, status, survival. But in the gifted mind, it mutates, taking on a complex and even self-destructive form, the will to greatness. From childhood, you were taught not just to live, but to justify your existence. While others drifted along, not asking complex questions, you grew up with a burning necessity. How do I prove I am worthy of what is expected of me? How do I turn my talent into something significant, something that will leave a mark? You seemingly had no right to err. Every step had to lead to triumph, and every thought had to be brilliant. And this race for recognition, imposed from outside, often stifles the true impulses of the soul, turning life into a tormenting struggle with oneself. And this striving, this craving to transcend the ordinary, like an insatiable beast, began to devour you from within. It escalated into a true obsession. But the cruel truth of life is that depth is rarely rewarded. The world rushes at a frantic pace. It is superficial and merciless to those who dare to think too much. Your talent, once distinguishing you from the crowd, has become a cage that has snapped shut around you. You cannot undertake a project without striving for absolute perfection. You cannot accept a simple, unpretentious life without feeling like a pathetic failure. You are paralyzed before every action, crushed by the weight of expectations, both real and imagined, that you feel are placed on your shoulders. This indomitable will to be exceptional is merely a pale imitation of the primal force that once propelled you forward. Schopenhauer asserted that suffering is inevitable, and the reason is simple. The more awareness you gain, the more acutely you feel how life is permeated by disappointment and a sense of helplessness. And if you are endowed with high intelligence, this realization becomes unbearably painful. You see the emptiness in social goals, in the insane pursuit of success, in the false promises of happiness. But even seeing this gaping abyss, you cannot simply free yourself, because the will still dominates you, urging, demanding you to accomplish something great, even as you drown in this oppressive silence. And the further you are from this unattainable ideal, the further you drift from your true essence. The talent bestowed upon you turns into a curse, and the awareness of your own imperfections becomes unbearable pain. Your mind, once a source of admiration and inspiration, now turns against you, becoming your fiercest enemy. You find yourself in a closed loop. You are plagued by the obsessive idea. You must create something grandiose, something that will justify your existence. But the sheer weight of this impossible task paralyzes you, drains your strength. And when you fail, you are engulfed by a wave of guilt, shame, self-contempt. And this vicious cycle begins anew. It is this internal, quiet yet destructive dynamic that plunges so many gifted individuals into a state of chronic dissatisfaction, constant procrastination, and self-destruction. And it's not due to laziness or disorganization at all. It's simply that they were taught from childhood that they had no right to be anything but brilliant. But what happens when this fragile ideal shatters? When talent doesn't yield the expected fruits? When harsh reality doesn't align with lofty expectations? What happens to those who were taught from birth to be special, but who could never find their place in this world? And that's when the real nightmare begins, because the next collapse won't just be around you, it will happen within you. This is what we'll discuss next, the moment when a personality forged in the crucible of talent begins to crack, and an adult finds themselves lost in the labyrinths of their own mind. Imagine a child growing up to the accompaniment of lavish praise about their genius, about how special they are, unlike anyone else. They don't just build their self-esteem, they construct an entire personality on this foundation. And this is where the sinister trap lies. Everything built solely on external approval, on the expectations of other people, is destined for a painful collapse, because the harsh reality of the adult world rarely confirms this rosy narrative. You enter life, firmly believing that your talent is a magic key to all doors, that your intellect will be enough to conquer the world. You are convinced that your genius alone will attract opportunities, success, and universal admiration. But suddenly, the realization hits that the market doesn't care about your brilliant ideas. It only needs ruthless productivity. That companies don't value depth of thought. They crave efficiency. That relationships are built not on flawless logic, but on emotional openness, boundless patience, and genuine presence. And the world you so confidently entered looks at you with cold indifference, confirming none of the beautiful illusions you were fed as a child. And suddenly, what once set you apart becomes useless, or even a burden. And then a quiet, imperceptible collapse begins. The former child prodigy, looking around, bitterly realizes that they are an outsider. The world no longer recognizes them, the applause has faded, and no one expects a miracle anymore. It would seem this should bring freedom, but instead there is an all-consuming emptiness. For if nothing is expected of you anymore, what remains? Who are you without that label, without the aura of genius? What remains when you are no longer a brilliant child, but just one of millions trying to make ends meet, to withstand the onslaught of problems, to simply survive? The personality built around talent dissipates like smoke, and in its place yawns a deep existential abyss, a crisis that has no name but which you feel in every cell of your body. This is the leaden weight every morning, and chronic procrastination, and apathy skillfully disguised as busyness. It is also the constant oppressive feeling that you are missing something, that you are falling behind, that you are not living the life you should be living. Schopenhauer foresaw this with ruthless clarity. He believed that the higher the intellect, the deeper the abyss of loneliness and disappointment into which a person risks falling, for a sharp mind exposes to them the wretched essence of existence, the triviality of human aspirations, the falsity of social connections. They look into the abyss, and the abyss does not look away. This is why so many gifted individuals flounder in the mire of self-flagellation, anxiety, and despair, not from weakness of spirit, no, but because their perceptiveness does not allow them to hide behind the veil of illusions that keep others afloat. But pain is born not only from disappointment in the world, it is, above all, the echo of an internal rupture. When you realize that you have lost yourself, that everything that defined your personality has lost its meaning. When former brilliance turns into a sullen shadow, that's when the collapse occurs. It is at this moment that many ask, why is the world so deaf to the voice of reason? Why, the more I understand, the more invisible I become. If talent is everything, why does it now feel like such a useless burden? The answer is simple. Society despises depth. This is what we will explore next. Why society so readily turns away from gifted individuals, and how this fuels the disappointment of those who were taught to strive for perfection. The pain of yesterday's child prodigies is not just a personal defeat. It is also the deafening silence surrounding their fall, an awkward, almost cruel suppression, as if the world has utterly forgotten someone it once extolled as a genius. But is that true? Did it really forget, or did it simply never truly care? The truth is uncomfortable, like a splinter under the nail. The world doesn't value genius unless it brings immediate, practical, and profitable benefit. Intellect itself doesn't inspire awe. Deep thoughts don't go viral. Intellectual sensitivity doesn't sell. We live in a society that extols productivity, not insight, where obedience is valued above clarity of mind, where preference is given to the mediocre but competent person rather than the unstable but brilliant one. This is where one of the most destructive aspects of Schopenhauer's philosophy lies. He asserted that the higher a person's level of consciousness, the lonelier they become. Isolation, like a shadow, pursues those who see the world differently. This happens when the veil drops and one sees what others turn away from in horror: the gaping emptiness of social rituals, the falsity of smiles and relationships, the wretchedness of thought disguised by a mask of ostentatious optimism. A discerning mind sees too much, and this is frightening. It invades the cozy realm of collective self-deception, asking questions that no one dares to answer. It strips away the covers from truths carefully hidden from prying eyes. You weren't forgotten. You were silenced because your intellect, like a merciless mirror, reflects what others desperately try not to notice in themselves: their own limitations, the fragility of their illusions, the comfortable but stifling mediocrity. Society doesn't reject talent as such. It rejects the discomfort that talent brings with it. For every bright mind is a dangerous mirror reflecting an unsightly truth. This is why so many gifted people feel invisible, ignored, useless, not because they have lost their value, but because they were never truly seen, only used as a symbol of unrealized potential, as a temporary trophy, as a screen for projecting others' often exorbitant expectations. Schopenhauer, as if challenging society, declares, "The recognition of the crowd rarely reflects the true depth of the soul. In this world, not the wise are placed on a pedestal, but those who are agreeable, not those who think, but those who entertain." And this is why so many young talents who shone brightly in childhood disappear without a trace as they enter adulthood. They didn't learn the art of hypocrisy. They didn't master the rules of this cruel game, and perhaps they shouldn't have, but the price for honesty proved exorbitantly high. Doubts creep into the soul, tormenting thoughts that perhaps you overestimated yourself, that your potential was just an illusion. And this doubt is a terrible torment for those accustomed to validating themselves through external recognition. When the world turns away, the mind screams, "I am a failure, I am worthless." But is that true? Have you really failed, or have you simply placed your hopes on those incapable of fulfilling them? Perhaps the problem isn't a lack of talent, but your inflated expectations of a world that, alas, isn't eager to value you as it did in your childhood. And this brings us to the main question. If recognition doesn't come from outside, where then should one seek it? How can a smart, disillusioned person regain meaning in life without depending on the approval of the crowd? This is where the turning point begins, where new hope is born. So, in the next section, we will unveil the true solution. It's not about reclaiming lost brilliance, but about understanding the deeper motives that drive you, learning to transform pain into invaluable wisdom. If you've read this far, you've already realized the path back to being a gifted child is closed. And frankly, it's meaningless. What broke you was not falling from the pedestal of talent, but the realization that your entire identity was built on a shaky foundation. Brilliance was merely a consequence, but you were convinced it was the sole goal. And now, in adulthood, the emptiness of this illusion devours you from within. It is at this moment that many rush to seek salvation. Courses, therapies, dizzying plans, radical changes. The desire for change is commendable, but change without understanding is merely a repetition of old pain in a new guise. You don't need another plan. You need a new perspective on the world. Arthur Schopenhauer offers precisely such a shift. He asserted that life, by its very nature, is suffering, not as a punishment, but as an inherent condition of existence. To hope that life will reward you for your intellect is like expecting the sea to treat you specially just because you know how to swim. The sea is indifferent, and so is life. But this is not a reason for despair. It means that truth is not external, but lies in how we perceive our experiences. Pain is not a mark of defeat, but a sign of insight. You see the world in its unvarnished reality, limited, superficial, alien to depth. And yes, this alienates, but it also grants freedom. The realization that you no longer need to justify anyone's expectations, not even your own childhood dreams, allows you to rebuild your life on a foundation of authenticity. There's no need to frantically increase your worth. You simply need to stop disputing it. It's no longer necessary to shine to feel worthy. It's important to be honest, to admit that the craving to impress, to reach peaks, is no longer yours. It was instilled by a system that turns talent into a commodity and the soul into a performance metric. But you are not a product. You are someone who has outlived their own mythology. And in that lies immense, inexhaustible strength. From this moment on, forget the superficiality. Focus on clarity, on the crystal clarity of your feelings, on understanding true values, on the ability to separate the wheat from the chaff. Don't seek this in conventional success. Seek it in conscious solitude, in the quiet search for meaning, in the courageous acceptance of your true self, without masks, without pretense, without the obsessive need to be better than everyone. It is in this space that genuine transformation is born, when you stop desperately seeking approving glances and turn your gaze inward, when the question, "What does the world expect of me?" is replaced by, "What do I expect from the world?" When your mind, suffocating under the burden of insurmountable goals, finds longed-for peace in a simple, meaningful life. But this purpose doesn't appear out of nowhere, as if by magic. It must be built, nurtured, cultivated. And here is the inevitable question: how? How can a person, lost and uprooted, begin a genuine rebirth? This is precisely what we will reveal in the final part. How the pain that brought you here can become the starting point for a new life. A life more free, more profound, and finally, lived in harmony with your true essence. Perhaps you've never admitted it aloud, but somewhere deep inside, you feel as though you've buried something very important. That very spark that ignited the fire in your eyes, that pushed you to contemplate, create, and dream, seems to have faded, and the world, without noticing the loss, rushed on. No one stopped to inquire about your state. No one asked where that talent, that passion, that unrealized potential, which was so evident to others, had disappeared. And so you were left alone, desperately trying to gather the shattered pieces of unfulfilled hopes, the remnants of promises that were never kept. But let me tell you a truth that few dare to speak aloud. You did not fail. The fault lies with a false narrative. It was a deceptive fairy tale that intelligence was enough for success, that talent was a predetermined destiny, that the world would greet your genius with open arms. And now, as this sweet lie crumbles to dust, you face the most challenging task: to confront your true self, stripped of past embellishments, without attached labels, without the burdensome weight of expectations. Just you, an uncut diamond, authentic, human, and in this lies a hidden gift. Because when the voice of talent falls silent, the truth can finally speak. The truth that you are something more than just a result, more than a grade on a report card, more than a diploma, more than a fleeting compliment, more than a promising future that was never meant to be. You are a survivor. You've been through the grinder of monstrous pressure, demanding you be the best, the first, the outstanding, and now, miraculously, you are given a chance at authenticity, the opportunity to breathe deeply, a life where you don't need to prove anything to anyone. A life lived consciously, with intention, with depth, felt in every cell. Arthur Schopenhauer, that somber genius, asserted, "Suffering is inevitable, but it is precisely suffering, paradoxically, that pushes us towards a more conscious existence." Stop desperately resisting the pain, listen to its whispers, to its cries, and then it will transform, not into comfort, no, into something far more valuable, into crystalline clarity.